Get mantra tracks and healing MP3s at JasonGallant.ca. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about restructuring, starting over. You know, what do you do once the paradigm for your life changes? Once the entire reason why you get up in the morning changes? Now, when you shift out of the ego, or at least in part, out of your own ego, the place where you are suffering, and you start to find a new fundamental reason of why you exist. It's no longer to attain, it's no longer to buy, it's no longer to consume. Or perhaps you had all these ideals when you were 5 or 10 or 15. I've talked about this lots of times. As you grow up, you notice that your desires change. So they are not really you, they are a transitory you. They're a transitory reflection of your desires and fears and suffering, you know, this big soup that is you at that time. But as you get older or as you evolve, your desires also evolve. So at some point you realize that, hey, if I get this new toy, or if I get this new relationship, or if I get this new job, if I obtain all these things, there's still a piece of me that can still be trapped in suffering regardless of attaining all these things. And that's when you're really ready for the spiritual path. That's when the real path begins, is when you start to see through the illusion. You start to see through that carrot on a stick that says, oh, once you get this, then happiness will be yours. Now, lots of times people come to spiritual teachers and they say, oh, I want this one thing, help me get that, and once I get that, I'll be good. And of course, it's never the case. The person might be good for a period of time, but it's never the immortal, unconditional good. Because once again, all you have to do is take that carrot away, and then the person is no longer good. So that's not unconditional. So as you embark upon this spiritual journey, you will be letting go of this identity and then seeking the unconditional fulfillment within. And then the question always arises, what now? You know, what now? My life was so stable before. You know, sometimes you'll be looking backwards and you're like, wow, there was some good parts about that. You know, it was pretty stable. You know, I knew who I was, even if it was BS, I still knew who I was, and I built a solid foundation around that. And you guys can't see, but this forest that I'm in right now, I went off the beaten path. You know, that's my job, is to clear new trails for you guys. Well, I went off the beaten path and I'm in the woods right now, and it seems like the ground I'm sitting on right now is very solid, but really what it's made out of is leaves. So every time I set the shot up, I noticed my chair would sink a little bit more, sink a little bit more, sink a little bit more. So I had to keep on getting up to change the camera so I wasn't totally out of the shot, right? It was like my top of my head was at the bottom of the screen. So in that way, there is the illusion. The old ego has the illusion of solidity. It has the illusion of sureness. It has the illusion of stability. That's the best way to put it. It has the illusion of stability, the illusion that everything is figured out and everything's good. So sometimes you'll look at somebody and you see they're quite sure about themselves, but really they're caught in suffering. And they'll seem almost like they're doing better than you are, even though you are a little bit more fulfilled on the inside than you were maybe years ago. You know, you don't have the same conditions. You're not so sure about these conditions like you were before. So it's like construction, like I explained to a person today. When you know that a building, a very large building, maybe it's got 50 floors in it, is built on a very shaky foundation and a horrible framework, in the end, the deconstruction of the building has to happen before the new one can emerge. And so often people that are in the deconstruction process of their spiritual journey are looking too quickly in how their building should be different. You know, they haven't even disintegrated the first one, but yet they're looking at how they should build it up right away. So really what I'm speaking to you about is having a little bit of patience and self-love for yourself as you're letting go of this old identity. You don't have to look back so much and say, okay, what did I have figured out? Oh, I should be this or I should be that. That's the whole point of this spiritual journey, is letting that go and allowing joy to emerge even if it doesn't make sense. You see, the mind always wants to make sense of things. It thinks it knows something about happiness, but really the mind knows nothing about happiness. It knows nothing about fulfillment. And only through surrender of the mind can fulfillment be possible. That's why sometimes, people will make comments down below the videos, or sometimes they'll say something, they'll say, Jason, you said this word wrong, or this or that, and I'll say, don't worry about that. And the reason why I say this is not because I'm offended by somebody correcting me, but what I'm saying is that you're letting your mind get in the way of just receiving something. Because the mind is the ultimate critic, right? The mind is always criticizing, looking for what's wrong with this moment, instead of receiving it anyway. Instead of saying, this moment is perfect the way it is. Right? But the internal critic comes up and says, no, it's not, it could be better this way, it could be better that way. And you see, that's what destroys your ability to experience this moment fully. The mind and the heart are not the same. The ego and the heart are not the same. So only through surrendering these subtle tricks, only through surrendering these subtle ways that the mind comes up, can you start to surrender to this. Now, one of the subtle tricks I'm talking about today is you're looking back over your shoulder and saying, oh, this was good, that was good, I had this sorted out. It's kind of like a bad relationship. You always remember the good times when you're going through a little bit of trauma around it. You always say, oh, but we had these good times. Meanwhile, 90% of it wasn't so good. So what I'm saying is, don't look back so much. It's not because you're doing something wrong. It's just that there's a deconstruction process happening. And once that deconstruction is finished, then a construction process can happen, which will be more fulfilled. It'll have a more stable structure. It'll have a structure based in your freedom, not in your compensation to suffering. Not in having a sports car because you don't have confidence. If you do have a sports car, it'll just become a movement of your freedom. It's not because you have to have the sports car, you see. Your freedom and your unconditionality isn't wrapped up in that material possession at that point. So the paradigm from which you act, the paradigm from which you do everything from, is different. You're not using life to medicate your suffering away. Your life is an expression of your joy and your freedom at that point. You see, so there's a difference. And really what I can say is it's not even your joy and freedom. It's just the joy and freedom that moves through you will have its own intelligence that threads through your life, and it automatically will be for a greater good, even if you don't understand how that works. Even if you don't understand why this, why that. The mind will always want to come in and say why. But you become a medicine for the world, you see? You start to follow this internal guidance, which has nothing to do with reading things and reading the sky and all this. It's just a movement of you that is just you. That's it. There's no justification for it. There's no explaining it. There's just this, and it moves. So bring your acceptance to the deconstruction at times if it is frustrating you. Just allow yourself to be frustrated. Allow yourself to receive all of the things that are going on in that moment. But just know that as you surrender, everything will take care of itself. It will just become apparent to you at some point, and the inward breath will start to move as the outward breath at some point. You will start to breathe outwards and express your new self. You can only wear so many pairs of pants, right? So first, one pair of pants has to come off before the next one goes on. The pants paradigm. So I hope this helps you on your spiritual journey. Take care for now.